Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Hello, hello. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We are excited for our webinar, Unlocking Potential, the Power of Pre-Hire and Early Recognition. We will get started shortly, but first I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar will be recorded and available on the RPI Learning Center following the session. Please keep your microphones muted and the cameras off during the presentation. If you have any questions, please send them throughout the presentation in the chat located on your control panel. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation, but if something comes up, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat as you think of it. And go ahead and change your name, make sure we know who is joining us today. And I will now introduce our presenters, Emily Gatton, Senior Vice President of Professional Services with Engage to Excel, and Darren Finley, President of Recruitment Solutions at Engage to Excel. Emily, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the call today. I'm honored to be sharing the stage with Darren Finley and Melissa Meunier, who is also going to be monitoring the chats for us today. Darren and I are really excited to share what we're seeing for recent trends and ideas around pre-hire and early recognition. And we hope to help you uncover new opportunities that engage your employees and drive results. Darren will start us off with a high-level overview of what we're seeing in today's labor market, followed by what job candidates are saying about recognition. Next, we're going to spend some time looking at the impact that a positive onboarding experience can have. And we'll end with several ideas to breathe new life into your recognition program. So let's jump in and get started. Darren, based on recent data, looks like the U.S. may actually see a soft landing and avoid the recession that seemed to be looming for the past year. Does that match what you're seeing in the labor market as well?
Thanks, Emily. And let me just say, first of all, thanks for having me on. And it's a pleasure to present with you today and be in front of this group. It's unusual that I'll kind of step out of the recruiting world and into the recognition world, although it's all tied together, as you're going to see today. But to answer your question, it is. We're seeing consumer spending continue to do really well in the marketplace. I was on a call with MasterCard even yesterday, and they were talking about how the consumer spending is very resilient, that any kind of experience is extremely well sought after in the marketplace, and that you continue to spend really across the board. And that's kind of what we're seeing also in the labor market. So when you look at the labor market data, and I'm kind of a junkie, a self-admitted junkie when it comes to labor market data. Some people say the labor market's kind of schizophrenic. They don't understand what's going on. I would like to present back to this group today that is not schizophrenic, that is actually pretty steady. It's pretty stable overall when you look at the numbers and think about how the labor market has behaved in the last year and a half, last 18 months or so post-COVID. We'll talk about some of the trends that we're seeing overall, but when you look at these stats that you see on the screen, there's 9.6 million open jobs. And that number is actually pretty stable. It has come down on average overall the last several months. I think we had 1 month back in April that it peaked, kind of jumped back up to 10.8 million jobs. But this average of around 9.4, 9.2 million jobs the last 6 months is kind of where we've seen the market land. And that honestly has been that way for 18 plus months. It's not really a lot different whether it's 10 million or 9 million jobs. That's still a ton of jobs open in the market. This new unemployment rate that we're seeing around 3.5, also when you look at the last 6 or 8 months, is hovered between 3.4 and 3.7. What does that really mean? Well, that means we're fully employed in the marketplace. That means that anyone who wants to work out there really today is working. We've got about 165 million people that participate in our labor force, and with 3.5% people unemployed, that's about 5.5 million people that are unemployed, looking for work actively. But when you match that up with the 9.6 million jobs, you still have about 4 million open jobs if everyone got employed tomorrow. But they're not. There's a skills mismatch, and that's what keeps the labor market tight overall. We have seen wage growth go up 4.4% in the last 12 months, so strong wage growth. It's come down a little bit in the last several months as core inflation has also come down a little bit. But at the bottom left, you'll see there's 187 new jobs added into the economy just this past month. And when you look at what that means, it means that healthcare added 63,000 jobs in the month. That's kind of above the 51,000 jobs they normally add per month. So if you're in healthcare, it's still very tight. They're still adding lots of jobs every month, even though we've seen some pullback with the way Medicare is reimbursing and a lot of the hiring. It's still a very robust labor market, very tight labor market overall. Social services added 24,000. Labor and construction, the trades each added 18 and 19,000 apiece. And leisure and hospitality, so restaurants and hotels, they've normally been on a really brisk hiring rate the last year and a half, slowed down just slightly. They added 67,000 jobs in Q1, and then last month they only added 17. So it's softened a little bit to your point, Emily, around kind of across the board. This monthly quit rate that you've seen, kind of the average that it's in, we've seen it as high as 4 million, 3.8 million. So that number is also steady. And then this labor participation rate at 62.9, that has been like that for about 6 months now straight. It hasn't really changed up or down. So there are people coming in the labor market, there are people going out of the labor market, but it's all very steady. And so when you think about inflation coming down a little bit, the economy is still doing quite well, GDP is still growing, and the labor market where it is, they do expect kind of a soft landing. But you will hear both. You'll hear, hey, we're up for a recession coming up, we're going to have a soft landing, or no way, we're still on fire. So at the end of the day, what we have to talk about today, I believe is relevant. And we want to think about, what candidates are saying in the marketplace today. So in February of this year, as we have done the last several years, since 2019, we do a Trendicator survey where we go out and we survey 1,500 candidates. And half of those are passive candidates, which means they're currently employed, they're not really looking. The other half are active candidates that are out there, I'm actually looking for work. And we want to understand their sentiment about the marketplace. What is important to them as individuals that are looking for work or maybe even not looking for work. And here are a couple of things that we wanted to highlight today that they say. And this is kind of interesting when you look at the top left side, the passive candidates that are willing to learn about an opportunity. So you're an employer, whether you're in HR or whether you're in comp and ben or whether you're in operations, just know that basically everybody in your organization is willing to learn about a new job. You really saw that in 2021 when you heard about the Great Resignation. All that really came up, and that was a new mantra during that time. 100% of our respondents said they'd be willing to find something new right after COVID. It's moderated a little bit last year and then kind of picked back up again this year. But what that really means is that no one's immune to an opportunity that might be out there. And when you look at also right below that and the other things that are here, relationships really are kind of key now, we see. And so how you build those relationships across the board are really going to be important. So when you think about that top right-hand side, would you consider another job offer if you weren't contacted between your offer and your first day on the job? And so what we've seen since 2019 is that number that say yes has gone up 29%. So that's kind of the worst possible time to lose a candidate. You put in all this work in candidate generation, you've recruited them, you've interviewed them, sometimes multiple times. You've made the decision to make an offer. Maybe you had to counter that offer along the way. You got them. Don't let them go. Don't let them drop in the black hole of background and pre-boarding that no one talks to them. Because if someone else comes along, it's very likely that they would consider that job offer along the way. And so in the bottom left-hand side, what we also see is that a personalized gift at the time of job offer would highly influence their decision to come on board with you. And we're going to talk more about that in just a little bit. And the other part, when I talk about relationships, on the bottom right-hand side, we asked the question, would you participate in a social community for an organization that I'm interested in, even if there are no current openings? We've also seen that go up 27%, which is really interesting. It's like, why would I engage with you if I'm not going to go to work for you? Well, based on your mission, your vision, your values, and most importantly, which we'll also talk about how you give recognition in your workplace, they want to continue to engage with you, and maybe they are part of a social community, or they meet you out somewhere, or they help you with whatever you're doing in the community around social activities you might be involved in. So it's really important to provide activities for candidates to engage with you in the community, on your social page, on your boards, and as part of your talent community overall, because they are interested in doing that. So the Trendicators data tells us a ton of things, and there's a lot of information we want to share with you, but I want to show you this. And what we always find this interesting is why employees leave organizations. So in our world, we're trying to help individuals recruit and find the right people. At the same time, in Emily's world, she's trying to help you hang on to them and keep those people, right? And so when we look at why employees leave, you can see the top 2 reasons overall since 2019 have been fair and equitable compensation and lack of recognition, appreciation, and respect. And those kind of go back and forth a little bit, but they're almost neck and neck across the board. We also saw conditions, concern about work conditions and job security always being one of the top 3. Right after COVID, when a lot of people were laid off, you saw the little bump in concern about job security. But now, back kind of like 2019, work conditions are really important. That's both physical conditions, that's social conditions, all of those things. So we know based on the research and statistically what's going on, and you guys live this every day in your world of recognition, that recognition plays a really vital role in not only helping you find, but keep those employees along the way. As part of the pre-hire piece, so it's kind of what I'm talking about today, right? Is what happens during that pre-hire process and how does recognition play a role? Well, it's really important, and as a matter of fact, when you think about how you're going to recognize those candidates. And so when you look at the top 3 reasons for accepting a job offer, you've got recognition as number 1, and it's been that way ever since 2019. Interestingly, compensation is not always the number 1 reason, and sometimes we think that it is. People talk about it all the time, and there's counter offers that happen from time to time, but really the appreciation, recognition, and respect is the number 1 reason why people accept those roles. And while you look at it from 19 to 23, it's actually gone up a little bit, and compensation really has stayed stable along the way. And then job fit is also the number 3 important reason. Getting the right person in the right role is also really critical. At the same time, we know these are the reasons they accept these jobs, why they reject those jobs, and you look across the board, and you can see also lack of recognition, appreciation, and respect during that pre-hire process is the number 1 reason for rejecting a job offer. And then you can see how it kind of vacillates back and forth between poor job fit, fair compensation, concern about job security, and then fair compensation again in 2023 are really the second tier reasons of why individuals will decline a job offer. So again, have some mercy on your recruiting teams. They're going through a lot to find the candidates, first of all, then they get them to a point of accepting the offers. Make sure along that process and along that journey that candidate has, that they're showing appreciation, recognition, and respect for their time and the things that they're doing to get all the way through the recruiting process at the end of the day, because we know that it takes work. Also think that when you look at this particular slide overall and think about the work that you do as recognition professionals and total rewards, comp and ben, whatever your role happens to be in the organization, it really does validate the good work and the important work that you're doing around rewards and recognition. It doesn't disvalidate it at all. It continues to validate the work that candidates are seeking out there when they're looking for organizations to go work for. I want to share just a couple more slides with you. And when you think about, well, Darren, how do we recognize people in the pre-hire process? Our job is to put a great package together once they've started and do the length of service and performance awards and things like that. Well, there are things you can do. Those are important. There are things you can do pre-hire. And one of those is how important, and this is the question we ask the candidates, how important is recognition rewards program on the company's website? 67% of the candidates said it's very important or important to understand how you recognize individuals at your organization while they're going through the recruiting process. This is both active and candidates. They said they want to know what you're doing from a recognition standpoint. In our programs that we do for our customers today, we go in, we understand the job, we do job intakes and discoveries around those jobs. Then we stop and go, how do you recognize and reward your people? What's your program? What does it look like? How do your managers live that every single day? Because candidates want to know. On the right-hand side, you can see during all the stages of that process from a pre-hire standpoint, both pre-offer, 69% say it's important, post-offer, but before their first day, also 69% during the onboarding period, and then even after the onboarding is complete, understanding how individuals are praised and recognized is really critically important. And I'll tell you, it's interesting when you talk about, well, how do you praise someone you don't even work with yet or hadn't been hired yet? It's really simple. You talk about their experience and their work history and the skills that they have, and you give them recognition for that, or maybe it's their responsiveness, how quick they responded back to you, and maybe they had to go through 2 or 3 interviews, and you recognize the fact that they sacrificed and made that investment in time. Those little things just around verbal recognition are really important to help those candidates understand that you kind of come from this recognition culture. But when you also look at that during the onboarding, that post-offer, but before the first day on down, we believe there's another thing that you can do around onboarding that'll really make an impact. And that's why I want to walk into this onboarding impact overall. So this, I kind of call it the R squared. And I just made that up, I guess, a couple of days ago, Emily. So when you hear R squared, like, well, what is that? Well, it's kind of like recognition and relationships, and they have to kind of come together, right? And that's what our onboarding impact is really all about. So there's these relationships that have to be built all throughout the process. And then there's this recognition that needs to occur as well. And when you think about the opportunity around the onboarding experience, you can see that at the very top right here, that 70% of the candidates said their first day experience will impact their decision to stay with your organization for a month. Like, oh my goodness, I mean, good luck hitting the computer on the first day, knowing what your agenda is the first day, where do I go the first day? I mean, all of these little bitty things impact individuals' decision to stay in the first month. 66% said that onboarding experience over the first period, whatever that period that is, impacts their decision to stay with your organization for the first year. I can't tell you how many times we talk to organizations. They go, man, if we could just get them past the first 90 days, if we could just get them past the first 6 months, they would stick around. So I just implore you to think about, what does your onboarding experience look like? And several organizations are putting together SWAT teams or Tiger teams that focus on this entire pre-boarding and onboarding experience to make sure that these candidates are getting the best welcome possible, the best setup for success as possible. And then at the bottom right, you see you're receiving a gift, a personalized gift from the employer, make a difference, and you accepting that offer. And 67% said yes. And so we know that it's important across the board to really help organizations think differently about how they do onboarding and how they welcome individuals. I want to share kind of a cool success story from one of our clients across the board, one of our clients specifically that implemented an onboarding program. So this organization said, hey, what we want to do is we want to use your program. We want to send a welcome gift to every candidate who accepts an offer before they start. And we want it sent to their home. That's our model, right? We send it to their home because it creates this affinity to the organization. It's surprise and delight. It involves everyone in the home, if there's other people there, in the experience of changing the jobs. When you think about the things that are most stressful in life, getting married, death, divorce, and changing jobs, right? Those are the things that cause stress for everybody, right? Well, let's make changing jobs less stressful. And when you do send out a welcome gift, what you find psychologically is, hey, I've been rewarded for a good decision. I'm going to keep making that decision. I'm going to show up. So psychologically, it works really well. It also helps you put your branding out there. It helps you put out part of your culture and your communication, what that culture is like out there. And so it's really interesting. We also always have a note in that goes out to those individuals that start. And it's funny that after the program's launched, all of a sudden there becomes this kind of internal battle. I'm just gonna give you heads up. This internal battle, like who gets to put the note? Is it the CHRO? Is it the CEO? Is it the division leader? Because people will talk about how this onboarding gift that came to their home impacted their early onboarding experience. For this customer specifically, we saw a huge decrease in the amount of people that showed up on their first day, so much so that their show rate went from around 82% to 99%. So this huge impact of, wow, I've been recognized, this is a cool company to work for. I'm gonna go ahead and start and see what's going on. And then also we saw a 42% reduction in the first 90-day turnover. They kept telling us, hey, this is the 90 days that are critical. We got to get them past that. So we helped them achieve that reduction in turnover in the first 90 days. So there's a lot of different things that you can do when it comes to onboarding. And I'm going to kind of shift a little bit and ask Emily to talk about some things. When you look at the things on the screen in front of you now, is that engage with them, build a relationship before day one. Send an onboarding welcome gift. Create opportunity for teammate interaction during the pre-hire process. Social activities are also important, and have those set up on day one. Have a plan. And those social activities, by the way, can be both for remote employees and your employees that are on site. So don't forget that it is possible to create social and video interaction on the first day with those new hire employees, and that is critical. Have your plan, have their equipment ready, whether they're in person or remote. Make sure you sign them up with a buddy, someone to help them unofficially navigate through the organization itself, and then introduce them to your recognition platform early. We believe this is a key to onboarding success, to get them into your culture, get them into your recognition culture, and help them understand how to give and how they're going to receive recognition along the way. So kind of the R squared, right? Relationships and recognition are really the key to making sure that you make an impact. So I'm going to just kind of flip it back over to Emily and go, hey, let's talk about what goes on with the recognition side once someone started. So from pre-hire to early on, what's that like?
Thank you, Darren. I really like the idea of that recognition and relationship, because I think oftentimes in our recognition programs, the goal is to build those relationships. You want to reach people on an emotional level, to have them connect with your organization, with your culture, your strategic initiatives. You really want them to care more about what they're doing. And so building those relationships and creating that emotional connection will help do that. So thank you for that. I want to now turn and think about, okay, once this employee is onboarded into your organization, how do we take all the great things that we did during the onboarding process and continue to build on them in those early stages to really set the foundation for engagement? First, let's think and look at these recognition perceptions. On the left, you see how employees rank the importance of different types of recognition. So despite the diversity of our workforces, our unique motivations, humans have an innate need to feel needed. We want that. You want to feel a part of something. And I firmly believe that recognition helps meet that need. So if you look at these stats, you see nearly all employees believe that recognition is important or very important to be recognized by their immediate supervisor for their stellar performance, for length of service, to be recognized by their peers or for their birthday. If you think about it, for us, I mean, how many times would I say, I wish I could get 89% of employees to agree on something? That's a really high number. That's pretty momentous. So for that, I think that you look at it and say, okay, we know then that recognition is important. It's going to make a difference. But it's worth noting that recognition by the immediate supervisor trumps all other forms. People agree on that more than anything else. So as we continue to dig in and think about how we can design our programs or think creatively about how to bolster what we are already doing, engaging and involving the immediate supervisor will be a key to success. And then on the right, you see employee feelings towards the amount of recognition they received at work. In this case, it's in their last position. And while 61% say they were satisfied with the recognition, only 56% believe they were fairly rewarded. So while everyone agrees that recognition is important, we need to close that gap on making sure that we're delivering the recognition effectively, and so it provides the maximum benefit. So let's talk then about how to achieve better outcomes. On the next slide, we'll look at the employee experience. And I think for most of us in this field, we agree that post-pandemic, employees have higher expectation for their experience at work. When you create a great employee experience, 60% of employees are more likely to stay with the company, 69% are more likely to be high performers, and 52% are more likely to show high discretionary effort. And I recently read some research that compared the pre-pandemic employee experience to the work location and how we thought a lot about, did we provide adequate lighting? How are our chairs? Is the break room good? Do employees have room to collaborate in shared spaces? And now I think we've shifted that focus and it's becoming more about a human-centered employee experience. But what does that mean? How do we create a human-centered employee experience? And I think that really means that you prioritize the human as the core pillar to your work design. So you need to integrate flexibility and empathy into your work policies. And as you see, when you embrace that approach, you can reduce work fatigue by 44%, increase the intent to stay by 45%, and improve performance by 28%. Lucky for us, the human-centered approach, it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be costly. There are tons of low to no cost ways to create that human-centered approach. And I think the recognition programs already target a lot of the key areas, but we can reap some incremental benefits by digging in a little bit deeper. To start, let's think about early recognition. Years ago, I viewed early recognition really as a precursor to a service award program. So you have your standard service award programs that typically recognize associates at 5, 10, 15 years. And when I thought about early recognition, I thought, okay, it's really kind of before that. So let's think about year 3, or even go back to year 1. And what can we do at that first year of employment to recognize associates' commitment? But now, though, I really think that we need to go back even further. Early recognition isn't just the precursor to a service award program, but it's an extension of onboarding. And I think Darren shared plenty of stats that show the impact that a great onboarding experience can have. So we need to determine, what do we do in that first year to ensure that the momentum continues? When I speak to employees about their early days in their position, I hear stories of feeling like you're drinking from a fire hose, right? I mean, you're totally overwhelmed. It's new people, new processes, an overload of information. You have new jargon and acronyms and a whole new culture to think about. But we can really help use our recognition programs to ease that transition. For example, as employees reach key milestones in their training, what are we doing to acknowledge that success? I know it seems small. Sometimes, depending on what kind of role a person plays, it may only take a week of on-the-job training. In other roles, it could take months. But setting some key milestones and making sure that we're acknowledging an employee's progression towards proficiency helps provide an impact and makes them remember, yes, this is why I'm here. I'm making progress. I'm doing what I want to do. And you want to provide that support to them. That could be as simple as setting the expectation for managers to send them an e-card from the recognition site, congratulating them on taking the training wheels off, and now you're on the road to the next part of your career. Maybe it's even just starting a team huddle and praising that employee for how quickly they're acclimating to the company. There are tons of ways to do it. And like I said, it doesn't have to be super expensive, but you need to be intentional in it. Set those expectations, pull in the manager, and make sure that you're setting the expectations for them as well, so that all employees are experiencing that great feedback and recognition. As the days tick by, I also recommend reinforcing the appreciation with regular communication. It could be an email sent at 30 or 60, 90 days. We're working with an organization now who's starting small gifts at 6 months. So just as Darren showed with that onboarding gift and the impact that they can have, how can we pull that in a little bit throughout that first year as well? You'd be surprised at how far some branded merchandise can go to making people feel a part of the team, making them feel like they belong there. So maybe 6 months is an opportunity. So let's reflect for a moment. Do you think that your organization establishes the recognition culture early? Or where are those opportunities to reinforce the employee's emotional connection to your company, to their manager, or to your overall mission and vision? Perhaps that opportunity sits with more strategic communication. During the first few months of employees' tenure, you really want to lay the foundation for engagement, and communicating early and often will help. Use the communications to reinforce your culture. Give them that emotional draw. You may want to target a different employee value, or maybe it's a strategic initiative each quarter where you share why that value is important to your company. You can give examples of how your employees live them each day. And ideally, you want to connect it back to that employee's specific role in your company. So I understand how I, as an individual, play into the initiatives and the drives that our small team is doing, and then how that impacts the larger success of the organization as well. That, again, goes back to that innate need that employees have, where we want to feel part of something. We want to have a sense of belonging. And it's amazing how you can use these communications to help create that. Another idea that I would say is think about how you can drive action. So one of my favorite tools for this is creating fun challenges. For example, we run challenges for a lot of our clients where we ask all employees, not just new ones, to log into their recognition program, complete a profile. Simple enough, right? Only takes a couple minutes. Users who complete their profile within a set period of time may be entered into a chance to win points at the end of the challenge period. We've also done different raffles for products. I mean, it's a small investment, but it's a huge return. And I say that because we found that users who complete their profile, where they're logging in, they're getting more familiar with the site, they're anywhere from 2 to 5%, or 2 to 5 times as likely to participate in the recognition site in the months that follow. In addition to that, you get a lot of great data. If you think about the information that people put in their profile, they're sharing their hobbies, things that are important to them. They share their privacy as well. They share how they like to receive recognition. That's a treasure trove of information for managers to know how to connect with their employees on a more personal level. So you're taking a few $1,000s, maybe more, maybe less, stretching it across the entire organization, but now you've armed your managers with tons of data, excuse me, that they can use to build those relationships and create the connections that will make sure when they're giving recognition, it's hitting the mark. Then after that, you might want to do some manager enablement. Tell managers how to use that data. Remind them, hey, you can go into an employee's profile and see how they like to receive recognition. So as you're preparing for your next service anniversary, look, see, do they like their name in lights? Do they like the public publicity? Or do they prefer to be recognized in a more private setting? And I think reminding managers and enabling them, like I said, it ensures that when you get that recognition from your immediate supervisor, it's going to be in the way that's personally meaningful to you.
It's been really helpful for me, Emily, when I had these individuals that I recognized, I kept recognizing her publicly, right? But when I went in and looked at the profile, it said private. Like, oh, okay. I'll start making that private recognition. And I think she was much more comfortable with it like that afterwards.
Yeah, it's a great call out. And I think we've all been there. I mean, I think we as managers and leaders, we think we want to make it a priority. We want to make sure someone knows they feel recognized. And for a lot of people, that's it. They want to feel it from their team, but you have those, and I have a couple of my team as well, that they just clam up and they get super uncomfortable and they say, I really don't want to be recognized that way. So like I said, once you collect the data, then teach your managers how to use it and remind them that that tool is there. And then most importantly, I would say, keep it fun. I love challenges because it gives people a chance to win. They get excited, but there are tons of other ways to do it. You know, maybe you make a random day seem special. How about a thank you Tuesday and say challenge everyone in the company to send an e-card or a quick note to a peer or a mentor who has made a difference in their career. Not only are you getting people engaged and back into the site again, but think about the impact that it has if you have a large number of people getting thank you on that given day and really reminded of how their efforts make a difference to their teams. So I'd really say review your communication strategy to look for ways that you can improve your connection to your employees. The tools are often already at your fingertips, but just being some thoughtful and intentional can ensure that they're producing maximum results. So next, let's talk about employee well-being. And I think this goes back to some of the things that Darren was speaking to as well. When you look at the 2023 Fortune 100 best companies to work for list, 83% of companies have a psychologically and emotionally healthy workplace. For a typical US company, it's only 52%. So we have some work to do in making sure that we're meeting employees where they are and meeting the needs that they have as individuals based on what's going on in their lives. But when organizations think about employee well-being, I think they're often thinking about the work-life balance or mental health counseling. Those are absolutely vital, don't get me wrong. But I think that the recognition program can also be another tool in your tool belt to help bolster that employee well-being. They go a long way, as I talked about before, in creating that sense of belonging, helping employees understand that they are part of a team. We've talked about several ways already, whether it's through the branded merchandise, maybe it's the communications that help them understand your organization, who you are, where you're going. But I think that you can dig in even further. So let's take life-changing events, for example. And Darren, this is something that you mentioned before. When an employee experiences a life-changing event, maybe it's a wedding, a baby, adoption, the death of a parent, whatever it may be, we as an organization should be there. I think oftentimes our benefits policy allots time off, which is great, but does that really strengthen the emotional connection to the employee? So what if we think instead about a gift specific to that occasion with a heartfelt note? I mean, a blanket that offers comfort in cases of bereavement. Maybe it's a frame that holds a picture for a wedding. Those things, anytime the employee goes back to them, they're going to remember that. And it's going to continually reinforce the message that you as an organization care not just about the results that they have or that they produce at work, but you care about the things that matter to them and that they hold most dear. I know for me as an individual, when I lost my grandmother, I still remember the people who checked in on me. I remember the gifts that I received. I received a plant that I kept. I don't really have a great green thumb. I'll be honest, I kill most things, but I worked really hard to keep that plant alive. And it's because of the meaning that it held for me. And I think that at those times when you feel most vulnerable, that is like the best fertile ground, so to speak, for creating emotional connection because you're emotionally vulnerable. So if we as organizations could reach out at those times, it will matter and it will make a difference to your employees. I think that another part of creating that great employee experience, thinking about the human-centered approach as well, is really acknowledging and celebrating our differences. So when you think about your recognition program, make sure that you're offering holiday cards that are celebrated by all employees, no matter their home country or their religion. Find cards that celebrate diversity. You really want these small things that reinforce the message that you care about employees on a personal level. And then lastly, I would say, think about a place for employees to be able to share personal events and to acknowledge and celebrate those together. So if you think back for a moment about the profile challenge we discussed earlier and the data that you get, Part of that information is your hobbies, your backgrounds, your skills, or dates that matter to you. So just a fun idea. What if you encouraged employees to read, acknowledge, and celebrate those items? Think of it like a scavenger hunt challenge where you have to go read employees' profiles, find someone you don't know, but maybe you share something in common with them. Maybe it's a hobby. Reach out and introduce yourself. I mean, how fun would that be to see the fun that ensues? People love scavenger hunts. So think about that, or how else you can encourage that to, again, use the data that you collected and make it work for you. It could be as simple as a reminder to employees that you have e-cards available for those occasions, and then highlight a few that maybe matter to your employees. So I know that we've shared several ideas, several thoughts. I'd love to hear from some of you on maybe outside of the box ideas that have produced big results. Maybe it's a small change. I mean, an email blast could be a small effort, but you saw big results from it. And I want to take just a minute to see if we could learn from each other and all of the great experience that we have collectively on the call. So if you can just type into your chat, we will be monitoring those and can share some of the things that we receive.
Don't be shy.
So one of the things that I see coming in is something that I've seen as well is really trying to create fun opportunities to connect with the leadership team. So thinking about a selfie with a CEO, maybe lunch with a member of your leadership team. I think those can go a long way. They're a bit hard to administer, especially if you're really spread out or thinking about the time commitment there. But it is something, especially for smaller organizations, that I think employees value. So we've received a couple others, I think, speaking to an internal social media with various groups that you can join. I think if you think about hobbies and different ways to connect employees, that would be a cool way to do it. Also, introduction of new staff through emails, giving them a photograph and a bio to help them understand and connect and meet virtually with the employee that's starting. Great ideas. We're receiving another one, contest entries for each e-card sent or received to a colleague, acknowledging them for demonstrating our core values. I love that too. I think we have an organization who probably was unprecedented from my experience in how well they initiated and got e-cards going. They really had their CEO challenge every employee to send 5 e-cards. Coming from the top down like that, I mean, I think it was within a month, the flurry of activity within this organization was incredible. And they remain years later, one of our highest usage clients of e-cards because they created such a good foundation. They really have these recognition ambassadors where the employees carried it forward from there and they were able to sustain it. But just getting that momentum going was super helpful. And I think the contest entries is a great way to do that as well. All right, lots of them coming in. So we have others. Oh, I like this idea. Recognizing existing staff who help a newcomer's transition into your workplace. So if you think about, I know one of Darren's suggestions for onboarding was to get a buddy. So what if you had that person that they could help give a tour? They were available for questions. Maybe they just checked in on them for 15 minutes over the first few weeks. And then recognizing those people for being a mentor is a great way to help employees understand the importance of it and show how much you value them welcoming those employees into your workplace.
Emily, I'm going to jump in. 2 things. One, if chat is not available, feel free to come off mute and share it verbally. I think we've got a couple of messages saying that they can't use the chat. But also, you know, Stephanie just shared something. She said, as they do with some of your meetings or some of the meetings with the advisory boards, they start with recognition moments. And I think that's so fantastic. And I think that's something we do internally as well. And then you hit your agenda items and then using points for raffle and contest prizes. People love little things, little tangible things. So anything that's a giveaway is another great idea. And
Oh,
Stephanie
that's-
said that's from an attendee.
Yeah, from 2 different attendees. Just want to clarify.
Thank you.
You mentioned diversity and how do you, create a inclusion and diversity within the organization. And I heard of one that was kind of a small thing, but what it is create a lot of awareness. And so each country would recognize the unique and independent holidays of the other countries. I would have never thought of that in about 1,000,000 years, right? But everyone in India was recognizing, the 4th of July. Well, when the Indian Independence Day came around, everybody in the US was recognizing their Independence Day. And there are other special holidays, that they had. So it was really interesting how that back and forth of recognition of those things that are so simple, but created this inclusionary kind of culture that gave you awareness of what's going on in somebody else's world, literally.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when you see organizations celebrate something that's maybe meaningful to the organization, but then they show how different people in different regions around the world celebrate it. Send in pictures of your team. You get to see the different work locations. What's the setup? What kind of food are they eating? It's so fun to be able to see the different cultures and how you're all working for one company with one mission, but you can connect with people on different levels and see how you have your own nuances. These ideas are great. So I see one that says sending a welcome card to the mail for new employees. They receive it within the first few days of their orientation. I think it's great. Like Darren said, when you get people right at that time of onboarding, they're joining the organization, anything that you can do is great, but to have it come in with a card that's a little bit more personalized, maybe have some people sign it and talk about your team spirit, fantastic way to welcome. Yeah, these are great. I love seeing the ideas come in. So I hope that through the ideas that we have shared and the ideas that you've received from each other, that you walk away from today with some ideas that you might be able to explore in your organization so you can help build that culture of recognition early. Really through that pre-hire process all the way through till the point where you've really turned those new hires into recognition ambassadors. And they're the ones that are carrying this message forward to those that are following in their footsteps. And with that, I say thank you for the time. Again, I hope that you have some ideas to walk away with. If there are any questions, we are happy to spend a few minutes taking those as well.
Hi there. I don't have any question, but I will tell you I'm Gail with Alberta Health Services. And we started this small button campaign, got a little manual button maker and thought, oh yeah, just for small teams and, just as a recognition thing that they want to do. Maybe it's physiotherapy therapist week or something. Anyway, it has now turned into where we send out over 100,000 a year. We have about 40 currently that are up, that are all different ones. We have a separate order form that we built, and it's amazing the impact. When I had to go to the hospital for something and I saw someone wearing it and I commented on the button, and they were just absolutely thrilled that I commented on the button that they had. And then they told me the story of how they got it. It really made an impact.
I love that. And I love the way it kind of grows over time, right? It's kind of the same idea that you start small and you let the employees drive it. And I think their engagement with it, their excitement about it, that's what's going to carry it forward. I love it.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone else have questions or an example to share?
Emily, I just dropped the link to the job seeker report in the chat for everybody. So if anybody wanted to go back and look at those stats that Darren and yourself mentioned throughout the presentation, they can use that link.
Great call out. Thank you, Melissa.
Let me want to say thanks for letting me join today. It's nice to meet everyone virtually and talk about recruiting and pre-hire recognition. So thank you for letting me join in today. It's really fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And Stephanie, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you both, Emily, Darren, and Melissa, for your moderating. We are so appreciative of your time today and all the great insights that you provided. And thank you to everyone that attended today. We so appreciate your engagement and you just being a part of the conversation, asking questions. We do have more webinars coming up that we invite you to register for. We have a practitioner roundtable coming up in October. So that is for RPI premium practitioner members only. But we do invite you to join and attend those. And we will also have more webinars coming up. So visit our website at recognition.org. And if you have any questions or want to get more involved, we would love to have you. You can email us at info@recognition.org. And thank you again. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.